Hey, welcome back to the Gotham and Beyond podcast. I am your host, Vince. Hopefully, you're doing well out there. Remember, you can go to Gotham-database.com or you can email me at gothamdatabase@gmail.com. So let's get on to today's show and talk a little bit more about what you're here for, and that is DC Heroes. So let's talk about the structure of this module we're going to talk about today. And that's what I'm really going to be doing today with this module. It's the Countdown to Armageddon module. You've got multiple crisis points in this module. You've got a train about to go off the rails. You got a dam situation building. You've got Star Labs getting hit. You've got a bigger threat sitting behind all of it. And that's what we're going to be talking about today. And all of this is tied together, or all these, I should say, is tied together by a ticking time clock. So it's not a vague clock, not a whatever the GM feels like clock. It is basically an actual timeline the GM will follow when reading this module and presenting it. If you look at how it's laid out, it literally tells you what time events happen and where exactly they happen. So that really means if your players are wasting time, they don't just lose momentum when it comes to things, they lose outcomes. Now, where most people mess this one up is kind of the same situation all the time. They look at this and go, what? Well, my players can't be in three places at once, so I gotta really kind of adjust it to meet my needs here for the game. So let's get into the meat of how we can do that. Because once you understand the timeline, the next thing to understand is how the module will force decisions out of your players. And it does it in a very specific way. Every major scene in this module is built like a problem with layers, not just a stop the train. It's more like doing why is the train failing or how fast is it going? Who's in danger right now? What happens if you do nothing for 30 seconds and just kind of sit there? That's how this module is written. You're not solving one thing, you're juggling all these problems at once, or all three of these problems at once. And that's why it works so well outside of just being Superman. Because this module is only, if you look at it, is built for Superman in mind. But you don't have to play Superman. You can use custom characters when it comes to these modules, as long as it's generally around the same build points as Superman. It doesn't really have to be, but we'll get into that. So let's stick with the train situation for a moment, which I started with. I know I was jumping a little bit to the left there, because this is one of the cleanest examples in the whole module that you can use. You've got a mechanical failure, you've got speed, you've got terrain, there's a bridge involved, there's timing, there's civilians, and depending on what the player does or the players do, that does change the outcome. Not in a vague way, in a very, very direct way. You stop the train early, though, minimum damage. You slow it, but don't stop it, partial crash. And you fail at stopping it, full disaster. And this module tells you exactly what that looks like. That is important because you're not guessing as a GM, you're just basically adjudicating, which a GM should be doing in most situations with the module. Now take that and apply it to the custom characters. This is where most GMs kind of get nervous. They think my players aren't strong enough for this, good. But this is where the game starts. Instead of asking, can they solve it? You start asking things like, what can they save? That's the different game. That's where it's going to be key. Maybe your characters can't stop that train, but maybe they can break open the doors, get the people out, slow one section enough to reduce casualties, divert part of the damage away from the populated area. Now the scene becomes about a triage. And triage is where the tension lives in this module. And here's something I want you to actually do at the table. When you run something like this module, tell your players the stakes of what's going on. Don't hide it from them. Let them know, like right up front, you don't have time to do everything. You need to pick what you want to do. Because the moment they realize that, the table situation kind of changes. No more perfect solution in the situation. Now it's kind of more like, who are we saving? And this module supports that all the way through. You've got multiple locations, you've got Star Labs dealing with internal problems, and you've got global threats building into the background. So there's lots of things to take care of. You've got a bigger plan unfolding, and all of it keeps moving whether the players engage with it. So here's how I'd structure it for a full campaign run, which you could probably get out of it. You break this module into like little fronts, or not like chapters or acts. Just I guess we're just going to call it fronts. Each disaster is kind of a front to deal with, and each front has its own little timer and a goal and a consequence. And you can keep track of them as a GM. Just keep track of all of them. Now your players are not following the story. They're mostly navigating the entire situation, and that's more of a shiftness. And this is where your game or a custom you're playing really starts to benefit. It doesn't have to Opolis, could be anywhere. Because you could swap out the flavor but keep the engine. Instead of Brainiac, it's a crime syndicate, it's a corrupt corporation, it's a metahuman experiment gone wrong. It really doesn't matter. You just swap in and it's how you need to do. What matters is that it has multiple problems, it has limited times, and there's no absolute perfect situation or solution out of this thing. And once you run one session like this, you'll see it immediately. Players will stop asking, what is next? And they start asking, where do we go? And that's when you know it. So you don't really have to fix too much of it, and that's the point. This module is built on pressure, and that is enough. It assumes the heroes are strong enough to try and cover everything, even then tight. So when you run this for your group of characters that are custom or whatever, you don't remove the pressure, you let it really hit them, smack them in the face. Here's how I run it straight out of the gate, and we're going to talk a little bit more about this. You take the opening situation, the train, that's your first session to deal with. You run it exactly as written in terms of structure, people, danger, mechanical failure, limited time, decisions that matter, but you scale the numbers back. You're not dealing with Superman lifting trains like nothing. You're dealing with your players or your player characters. Maybe they could slow it down. Maybe they could save one section at a time. Maybe they have a choice between stopping or the crash or getting people out. That's basically the shift. And I know I've mentioned that previously, but I'm trying to emphasize the point of how you can make this into different players. It's the same exact scene, just written in a different outcome for a different character. And the key for this is you let the world react to that outcome. If they fail to fully stop it, people will die. If they succeed halfway, the news will spin it. If they nail it, they get a win, but the clock keeps ticking because the rest of the module does not stop. Remember, there are other threats in this module, and that's where this thing becomes something else entirely. It stops becoming a Superman adventure once you start realizing this and becomes a system of all these things, these disasters, running overlap of disasters where your players are always behind the curve, always making calls, always choosing what matters most. Now think about that in your game. Whether it's Gotham, I usually play in Gotham. There's no Batman in my Gotham games. Though I play in there. There's no Superman. You drop this structure in, and now you've got fires, gang hits, chemical leaks, power grid failures, all that happening at once. It sounds like Gotham, right? And your crew of superheroes, they're just trying to keep the city from collapsing in on it. And that's where the fun happens. All these consequences from their decisions, not soft ones, not we'll do it later. We'll hand wave it later, whatever. Real visible in your face consequences. This module already gives you the blueprints for you to play. If something goes wrong, it tells you what happened. People get hurt, infrastructures fall, situations escalate. You're not inventing Fallout, it's already baked into this entire thing. So when you run this with custom characters, you really can lean into all this and get it to work. Lean into it hard. I mean, let's say your group handles the train, but then they ignore next event. That dam, well, it breaks. Now you've got a flood happening. Uh-oh. Now the roads are gone, the power is out, emergency services are stretched really thin at this point. Now your next session is not what's the next mission, it's more like how bad did we let it get? And here's where you take it one step even further if you're thinking about this. You let the consequences start stacking. Train failure leads to public panic, dam failure leads to flooding, lab failure leads to something worse getting loose on the city. Now those things start interacting with one another. Now your players are dealing with a city or a region that is actively falling apart. That's not scripted. That's just basically emergent, and it comes straight out of how this module is really built. Talking about this module, or reading this module, I should say, it kind of rewards partial success. Most games are, kind of binary. You win or you lose the situation when it comes to these modules. And this isn't that. In this setup, you can basically save most people, but not all. Stop the worst outcome, but not really the damage. Delay something instead of preventing it. And the game keeps going. There's so much stuff going on. And that's huge for these custom new characters you're playing, because your players don't need to be perfect. They just need to matter in these situations. And that's the mindset shift. You're not asking, did they stop it? You're mostly asking, did they make it better? So that's basically the module that you'll be running at the table. And that's the clean way you can do it when it comes to these characters. And before the session starts, pick 2 to 3 active crises, set a simple timer for each, and decide what failure looks like when it comes to during play. Remind players of time passing, cut between scenes if needed, let them choose where to go. After each session, update the world based on what happened in your notes, carry any consequences forward, add a new problem if needed based on the situation beforehand that just failed, and that's basically it. You don't need to rewrite the module, you don't need to overthink it. You just need to write it down, calculate the pressures, and let the players deal with it every session. And that's why this module is actually pretty cool, because underneath all the Superman stuff, this thing is just a clean, brutal way to run a living situation for your characters to deal with. That is this module, and that's going to be episode 13 for this week. Hopefully, you've enjoyed this. If you've got this module on your shelf, I'd suggest pulling it out. It is for the first edition rules, I believe, but it doesn't really matter. They're so close. And most of these modules are built for specific characters in mind. And I've always hated that about DC modules, that they're like, this is for the Teen Titans, or this is for, this group, or this is for Batman and Robin. This one's for Superman. This one's for Green Lantern. I've always absolutely hated that about DC modules, and I always overlook them. I bought them because, that's what we do when we collect stuff, and I'm one of those weird collector peoples. But in the last, I don't know, few years or so, that I've been running the module. The Alexa went off in the background, so I started laughing. I'm running these modules. I lost my train of thought because Alexa screwed me up. But over the last couple of years, I've been looking for different ways to run situations, and I have all these modules. I'm like, you know what? Since I'm doing this podcast, why don't we start reels and see what we can do with them? Now, this Superman module here, Countdown to Armageddon, I was like, okay, this is a Superman one, so it's probably going to be one of those in the ass things that you're going to need to be Superman level. You really don't need to be. They have a bunch of crisis going on in this module that any superhero can possibly stop, including one without Superman like powers. It's just a matter of thinking ways to do it. Now, the speeding train thing, yeah, your superheroes, unless they're Superman power, are probably not going to be stopping that train like a Superman, but there are various ways they could do. Getting the people off the train is a perfect example before it crashes. So, stopping sections of the train, disconnecting the couplers on some of the trains so the people in the train don't get hurt. There are various situations you could do, and you don't have to be Superman. So I'm going to be taking a look at some of these modules going forward in the future, and just kind of reviewing them and thinking of ways that you can use them without having to use the labeled character from DC in the actual module. And this is a perfect example of how. This is a bunch of crisis laid out for you. Have your players figure it out, put the pressure on them, and have a good time. You can stretch this out for quite some time. At least I'm going to say a good half dozen sessions, maybe even more, depending on how your players act and how much time you play for a session. Generally, I'm playing for 2 to 4 hours running a session, so I could stretch this out for a good 5 or 6 stretches this module session. Hopefully you've enjoyed this. Don't forget to go to Gothamdatabase.com. There's a bunch of articles up that I've been doing, kind of reviewing little things called Gotham Knights, different rules that I'm looking at. You can contact me, gothamdatabase@gmail.com. With that said, I'm going to head out. Hopefully you have a great day. Oh, yes, that's right. You can also hit us up on YouTube. which I believe is I think Gotham and Beyond podcast on it. You can also follow me on Twitter at Gothamdatabase. I'm gonna head out. Keep it original, keep it old school. Good night, and God bless.